after the U.S. and the U.K. launched strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. The militant group vowed to retaliate. CNN's Oren Lieberman is joining us right now from the Pentagon. Oren, we're now learning that another ship was hit by a missile just off the coast.
Yes, the Houthi logo says "a curse upon the Jews" as his last line. It's I think death to America, death to Israel, Islam will prevail, and a curse upon the Jews. I think is their
What's the latest
motto.
We have seen more launches since the incident on Sunday in which a U.S. fighter jet shot down a cruise missile that was fired at a U.S. destroyer in the Red Sea. We've just learned from U.S. Central Command that there was a ballistic missile fired against a U.S.-owned and operated vessel. The Central Command did not say exactly where this happened, but the UK Maritime Security Organization said that this happened south of Yemen. The missile fired by the Houthis struck the MV Gibraltar Eagle, a Marshall Islands flagged, U.S.-owned and operated bulk carrier that was traveling through.
Yeah, this is shocking to me. This was sold to me as perhaps the most successful way of de-escalating, and it doesn't seem to have de-escalated the situation. As a matter of fact, it seems to have galvanized the popular support that they are now enjoying, especially considering that despite the fact that the UAE and Saudi Arabia have their own dog in the fight, even the Sunni sects within Yemen have basically thrown their support not behind the Houthis directly, but certainly behind pushing back against Israel and even the blockade. It's interesting. It's interesting that a lot of these guys were talking about how these guys are bad and they're unpopular and what they're doing is actually for the behest of stealing commercial vessels so they can, I guess, sell it or something, and that America's bombing campaign is totally just, and that it would absolutely stop once America blew up some positions inside of Yemen, and it turns out to have not been true. Even the Rand Corporation, as we showed the other day, which is not a liberal, peaceful dove by any means, considered this to be a smart idea or a good strategy whatsoever. And yet we got liberals here, so at least it's on his live today and doesn't use the excuse that other people use. Wait, what do you mean? That is MLK Day?
Through the Red Sea, obviously one
shot at Ethan? No, this is not a shot at Ethan at all. What are you talking about? Oh, because Ethan is not live? Is that what you... Guys, let him live, okay? You're being such a weirdo for being why is my favorite comedy podcast not live on MLK Day? I can't believe he took a day off. It's ridiculous.
One of the world's most critical waterways. Now, according to U.S. Central Command, there was minor damage to the ship and no injuries. And crucially here, the ship itself remained seaworthy, which is that it continued on its way as part of its voyage. But of course, the Houthis had promised to retaliate. They said that any U.S. or U.K. asset was a legitimate target. So this, perhaps part of the retaliation and the response that the Houthis had promised against the much more widespread U.S. and U.K. strikes that we saw on Thursday evening. Worth pointing out that the U.S. then carried out a follow-on strike 24 hours later. The Pentagon and the White House had expected a Houthi response. This may be part of it, but the expectation is there will be something, frankly, bigger, broader, and more powerful coming from the Houthis. Still, this is now the third or fourth launch we've seen from Houthi territory following the U.S. strikes. Makes clear that the Houthis retain and still have quite a bit of military capability to try to threaten Red Sea shipping here. The U.S., the U.K., and the other coalition there trying to safeguard that shipping to make the waterway safe. Wolf, I think with what you see here playing out over the last 24 hours, it is impossible to say that the waterway is safe at this point, even as the U.S. tries to get...
Wait, this is so shocking. God, color me surprised, guys. I'm still shocked. It's an incredibly shocking moment that the American de-escalatory bombing campaign didn't end up de-escalating, but they said it would, and everyone defended it as such and kept celebrating, as a matter of fact, the attacks on commercial shipping will stop. We'll cease. That's what the weirdest losers were saying online.
Yeah, Oren Lieberman at the Pentagon for us. It looks like this situation is escalating.
Yeah. Reactionaries be give bombs a chance. How about instead of give peace a chance? This is hardly an escalation. You stretching. You're right. Since when is directly engaging in a bombing campaign considered an escalation. Chatter, you're 100% right. 100 P. I apologize. You're right. I should actually admit that it is a de-escalatory measure, as a matter of fact. A de-escalatory bombing.
Big time indeed. All right, thanks very, very much.
All right, we're taking you now to the House of Commons, where we're hearing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak speaking. Let's listen in.
They fired on our ships and our sailors. It was the biggest attack.
Dude, honestly, listen, it says a lot about the Western mentality, but specifically the American mindset that like there are legitimately people who think that this is an act of de-escalation, because American hogs specifically think that the solution to gun violence is making sure your guns have guns. That, yeah, you're right. That Call of Duty de-escalate by pointing a gun technique that is a meme, right, that we've joked about before, is unironically the modus operandi of many hogs in America, many hogs and hoglets. They literally do think like the only way to solve a issue is by showing how awesome and mighty our weapons are, and that's how it works. Only 30% of people believe that. First of all, that's still a not insignificant number. And no, when I talk about reactionaries, I don't just simply mean the 30% Donald Trump supporters and whatnot.
On the Royal Navy for decades. And so we acted. We did so in self-defense, consistent with the UN Charter, and to uphold freedom of navigation, as Britain has always done. Alongside the United States, with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada, and the Netherlands, we ordered the RAF to strike 2 Houthi military facilities in Yemen. I want to be clear that these were limited strikes. They were carefully targeted at launch sites for drones and ballistic missiles to degrade the Houthis' capacity to make further attacks on international shipping. I can tell the House today that our initial assessment is that all 13 planned targets.
Yeah, here's the de-escalation.
Special forces, stay inside. Get back inside. Oh, shit.
Wait, hold. What? Wait, that's how you de-escalate?
Stay inside.
Hold right click to de-escalate civilians. The difference, of course, is that you didn't shoot the civilian that time. And honestly, like, the American government's policy is actually shooting the civilian to de-escalate it.
Were destroyed. At the drone and cruise missile base in Barney, 9 buildings were successfully hit. A further 3 buildings were hit at Abs Airfield, along with a cruise missile launcher caught in the open. We have seen no evidence thus far of civilian casualties, which we took great care to avoid. I know the whole House will join me in paying tribute to the incredible bravery and professionalism of all our servicemen and women. The need to maximize the security and effectiveness of the operation meant that it was not possible to bring this matter to the House in advance. But we took care to brief members.
Thank God they didn't. They had to move quickly, so they couldn't bring the matter to the House. You know what I mean?
Before the strikes took place, including you, of course, Mr. Speaker, and the Leader of the Opposition. And I've come to the House at the earliest possible opportunity. Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, the unelected Prime Minister as well. God, such a wonderful moment for British democracy. Now, having said that, of course, the Labour side is not any better. I mean, didn't Keir Starmer like actually sign off on the bombings too? Like, he is straight up. Yeah, and Keir Stormfront. Yeah, Keir Stormfront himself is also an incredible psychopath. So he is Keir Stormfront. That's so awesome. Jesus Christ. The situation is dire. Folks, it's not looking too good. It's not looking too good anywhere. Certainly not in the UK. Certainly. Someone said kid starver, which is also great. Yeah, wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff overall. The UK is doing great. He has the Richard Spencer haircut. Blood Labor is clapped. Oh, 100%. He didn't support any of the UK worker strikes, only airstrikes. Labour are supposed to oppose the Tories, but they're Tories 2.0. My friend, the new Labour is the old Labour. It's the Tony Blair Labour. The entire point of Starmer and everyone else was to destroy the Corbyn faction and eviscerate, like gut any sort of real, genuine ideological socialist within the Labour Party so they could be the conservative, the Tory Labour Party themselves. Hold on. There was a guy that I wanted to show you. Jeremy Corbyn's policy advisor, his name is, what was it? He's like Andrew something? Andrew Fisher. Andrew Fisher had a wonderful video going around on Twitter from the Middle East Eye. Let's see if I can find it. Oh, here.
I think what it highlights is the extreme double.
This is a phenomenal video and very short, 1 minute and 28 seconds, like Andrew Fisher, a journalist, writer, and Jeremy Corbyn's policy advisor. Oh, I tweeted about it. Never mind. I thought I forgot to tweet about it, but I did tweet about it. I said, bombing a country after your proxies did a genocide is bad, even if you don't like the Houthis, especially when their actions in the Red Sea are to disrupt shipping until the ethnic cleansing in Gaza stops. Reminds me of the Iraq war jingoism from liberals. Here is Andrew Fisher to really bring home that point. Okay.
I think what it highlights is the extreme double standards. Here we are. The Houthis have been attacking shipping lanes. No deaths so far, thankfully. Israel's been bombarding Gaza for the last 3 months. Tens of thousands of people died, children being amputated without anaesthetic, and that's fine. No sanctions on Israel, no strikes against them, no arms embargo. But
I guess this is because this is
rebel,
against the UK target, though, right? Is that not?
It's because we don't care about international law or human rights. We have this rhetoric that we do, but we don't. This is absolute nonsense, and this whole conflict is exposing that. We say that, you know, the Iran-backed Houthi rebels, well, they've been bombed by the US and UK-backed Saudi Arabia for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Actually, the last Labour administration was calling for sanctions on Saudi Arabia over this for an arms embargo. Hilary Benz, somebody who's serving under Keir Starmer, was leading this within the last shadow cabinet. So, we talk about this in completely bizarre ways that spins it into this sort of thing of one side is bad and the other side's crimes are airwashed. I mean, we've got a case in the International Court of Justice today brought by South Africa against Israel for genocide. We're not talking about that. We're talking about some interruption to shipping lanes.
Yeah. And for the record, I know for a fact, because like producers reach out to me all the time to go on television, I know for a fact that the major point of contention now is specifically going to be Yemen and how there is actually moral permission, nay, a responsibility to continue escalating the tensions in Yemen, which is a great way to stop talking about Israel, obviously. Why would you talk about Israel? 100 days of bombing, 23,000 dead, 12,000 plus children dead, murdered by the state of Israel with our go-ahead, with our permission, with our munitions that we secretly send, okay, that we expediently send over to Israel. And this is a great way to draw the attention away from that slowly but surely and say, hey, guys, let's do it. Let's talk about Yemen. Let's talk about Yemen. Producers want me to go on their TV shows and specifically debate on why it is actually not appropriate to bomb Yemen. That's what they want to talk about. That's what they got going on for the upcoming week, as a matter of fact. I know that because they're saying like, hey, our schedule is wide open. We have an entire week of Yemen conversations. That to me spells that that is where we're going to move towards. That's what we're moving towards in the point of contention.
I mean, it's pretty small-scale stuff when tens of thousands of people are being killed. And, I don't care what adjective you call it, whether you call it a massacre, a slaughter, ethnic cleansing, genocide, it doesn't really much matter. Tens of thousands of people are being killed, and we're not talking about that. We're talking about some shipping lanes. It's perverse, really. And the rest of the world can see it. I think what it highlights...
Perfect. Not sure how our supply to Israel is a secret. We literally give them money to buy munitions from the U.S. businesses. Sorry, I meant... the Biden administration has taken unique initiatives in our expedient ways of arming Israel, where we sidestep Congress and we limit the transparency of what kinds of munitions are being used for what purpose when we send over those munitions to Israel. This is like we're bypassing prior protocol that has existed for a good reason, really. So there's some kind of accountability. But here it is. The Biden administration is quietly providing intelligence to Israel for targeting purposes as well, by the way. Deploying U.S. Air Force intelligence engagement officers on the ground in Tel Aviv, according to a deployment order obtained under FOIA. This is another thing that we're doing in secret. So should we simply give up on the Red Sea route is a great question. No, of course not. It is a profoundly important route for commercial shipping, for international shipping. What we should do instead is do the pragmatic thing and to do the moral thing, which is to stop Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. That's it. it is so ridiculous to look at the situation and go, all right, well, Israel's not going to stop. We can't get him to stop, so we might as well just stop using the Red Sea. That is crazy. Israel is treated like a force of nature. Is so weird. Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, the bombing will continue. It does not matter. Of course, this is my position on the matter. So in the past week, I'm sure if you frequent other circles online of those who masquerade as progressives, you've probably heard why America's bombing campaign on Yemen is totally morally just, and that, like, if I am saying that that is not morally just, and I must be like anti-Semitic and am operating on really simple binaries like America bad. Now, if that's your perspective, I think you can understand by looking for a little bit more clarity in my commentary. I heard you being called Nazis. Yeah, it's awesome. That's great. If only I used tactical N-words in my debates, would I come across as less Nazi adjacent, especially when I duke it out with like the concept of black nationalism or Pan-African nationalism as though it is as damaging and as devastating as the white nationalism of Western imperialist forces. In that circumstance, you would understand that I am simply super based-pilled and logic maxing. And I don't know, just the modern rendition of Socrates. Yeah, I have to show I got to show my interlocutors the word doesn't hurt me if they couldn't tell from, my white skin. Is there a full explanation of the explanation video you recommend? There is almost always a full explanation, and the videos are almost always on my YouTube. 33 minutes long, U.S. strikes Yemen. Boom. There it is. You watch that full video, you will understand. You will come across with a decent takeaway. There's two things to cover here. As I correctly called out, liberals will say the people of Yemen are slavers. The Houthis specifically are the slavers, is what they will say. That's number one, which is, being thrown around everywhere. And that they've institutionalized slavery, which is false. And then they also say that they're racist and anti-Semitic, which there is truth to, 100%. And even with the slavery issue, there is also truth to that as well. It's the poorest country on one of the poorest countries on the planet. Having said that, however, this is not a justification for bombing. It doesn't work that way. I stand on that. And I will continue to stand on that. You are simply using this as a justification. We do not bomb Saudi Arabia. The slavery, the Yemen, the Houthis reinstituted slavery, for the record, by the way, is coming directly from some random Saudi blog. It's not true. Is there slavery or wage slaveries in one of the most economically destitute places? Absolutely. Of course. The idea that the Houthis institutionalized is ridiculous. And they don't have to be good for you to look at their actions in this situation. Bombing America would not fix America. I will never advocate to bomb America because we have institutionalized slavery. We've codified it under the 13th Amendment as a punishment. And yet, despite the fact that we have the largest slave labor, like official sanctioned slave labor population, the biggest per capita prisoner population on the planet, that doesn't mean that we should be bombing Rikers, for example, to liberate the United States of America. And that is not how it works. This is not a justification for slavery. Slavery is immoral, gross, wrong, understandably so. It's just that the solution is never to blow up the country and kill everyone in it. And to act as though we are bombing Yemen because we care about slavery is a laughable notion, because the idea that the current government, okay, where most of the people live, that has been the current government now and has withstood genocide from American proxies in the form of Saudi Arabia and UAE, but specifically Saudi Arabia, those guys have reinstituted slavery. That comes from a Saudi blog, which is ironic considering we don't bomb Saudi Arabia for their profoundly backwards perspective on civil liberties, nor slavery either. Nor do we bomb the UAE or Qatar, hopefully. I mean, oh my God, I'm not advocating for that. Please don't understand. Please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I am anti-bombing. I do not believe we should bomb Israel for its mistreatment of immigrant workers either, withholding pay from migrant workers in Israel until they follow through on their conditions of leaving the country. That doesn't mean that we should be bombing Israel for that reason. It's ridiculous. Or their subjugation of Palestinian workers. You do not do that. You do not bomb countries to liberate them. That is a stupid Amerifat brain disease that many people champion for some weird reason here. And I don't know why they do it. I guess I do know why they do it. It's because it's just empire shit. You got to defend it. So how do we stop Israel? Great way to do. Great question. Great question. Stop giving them bombs and permission. That's it. It's so simple. It actually frustrates me to no end. My solution to Israel is not to bomb Israel. My solution to the Israeli genocide of Palestinians is to stop Israel from genociding Palestinians.
I do not take decisions on the use of force lightly. That's why I stress that this action was taken in self-defense. Yet, the Houthis continued on their reckless path. Mr. Speaker, we shouldn't fall for their malign narrative that this is about Israel and Gaza. They target ships from around the world. We continue to work towards a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza and to get more aid to civilians. We also continue to support a negotiated settlement in Yemen's civil war. But I want to be very clear.
Wait, what?
That this action...
A negotiated settlement in Yemen's civil war. I thought that part was just like, I thought that was done already. I love that that is like a thing that you can just trot out. Like, I mean, that was tried, folks. They did that already. The negotiated settlement in Yemen's civil war came at the heels of Saudi and UAE-backed groups. The Saudi-backed one being the former leader. Like, negotiations are still ongoing, yes, but I mean, like, in practice. I agree we shouldn't send them anything, but do you not think that Israel will become a North Korea, essentially? I can't see them caving into any amount of international pressure like South Africa did. Yeah, that's a really funny way to look at it because, like, the amount of violence that North Korea has caused in the last 40, 50 years total does not combine the amount of violence that Israel does on any given Sunday. So that's a really funny take because, like, what violence? Like, I mean, it's not a great place to live, certainly. Okay. They're gutted. Their economy is had to withstand. I mean, there was massive famines and whatnot, but like, what comparison can you make with North Korea and Israel? And beyond that, obviously, North Korea is not an aligned nation. North Korea does not make the internal calculation that American support is unconditional. North Korea makes the calculation that they've never experienced a single day where they had free commerce and free flow and free international trade because of the United States of America. So there's no comparison to be made there. Just something to consider. Stop calling Ansar Allah the legitimate governing party of Yemen Houthi rebels. I mean, I colloquially utilize both, but I also do not ride or die for Ansar Allah either. Like, I don't think it's helpful or productive to get lost in the weeds of the internal conflict in Yemen. I give you additional details about UAE and Saudi developments in that region, but ultimately, it's a silly sidestep that benefits the liberal posturing in this position, and we move away from the major point of contention here. It's very dumb to have that conversation unless the conditions of why you're having that conversation are clear, which is, not recognizing them as the de facto government is a lost cause. That's number one. Number two, it's also additionally silly to talk about that because America's bombing of Yemen galvanizes the Houthis, Ansar Allah, and basically further entrenches them in power, which is precisely the reason why it's ridiculous to have this conversation with liberals who try to act like, no, bombing Yemen is somehow the good position. Yeah, which is why so many liberals are now moving away from The prior position that it was like, we have to do this to protect international commerce, but these guys are also slavers. These guys are bad, blah, 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 blah. So like, oh, actually, the real reason why the Houthi rebels, Iranian-backed Houthi rebels, actually were taking pot shots at all matter of commercial vessels that are passing through the Red Sea that do not respond to their calls, are actually doing it to solidify their support in Yemen. And it's like, well, why did you give them that then? Why did you give them that? If your goal overall was to instill some kind of regime change or to reinstitute the former regime, the Saudi-backed regime, then why are you giving them the opportunity to galvanize? It makes no sense. It is belligerent. It is insane. It is counterproductive. And yet liberals can maintain these positions and act like they're doing something good when it is demonstrably a failure. That's it. That's it. It is demonstrably a failure. Burner account, a ceasefire won't help Gaza. Sure. I think you should take it up with a Palestinian that is currently experiencing just the worst bombing campaign of their lives, as like all of their family members have been blown to bits. They want a ceasefire first and foremost. I do not care about the takes of Westerners, who fancy themselves to be revolutionary Marxist-Leninists or whatever. It's a really ridiculous prospect. That is what people in Gaza say. They say, we want a ceasefire immediately. Did you get a new mic? Your audio sounds different, or is there something wrong with my hearing? I don't know. No, I did not get a new microphone. I'm using the same exact microphone as the SM7B. I, however, did get a Rodecaster Pro 2, and its software is better than Rodecaster Pro 1, and that is where I'm at now. And it's doing, apparently it sounds great, is what a lot of people said. I thought you sounded different / sexier than usual. You sound hotter. I don't know how to explain it. Okay, well, good. Good. Do you think liberals, conservatives actually believe the Houthi attacks are separable from the situation in Israel? Isn't this just an obvious lie? I think that liberals and conservatives don't really think. I think that they just simply say. And what they're saying is whatever they heard on television. Whatever justifies the American position, they will simply repeat. That's it. There's not a lot of thought or consideration to it. That is why when you analyze the situation and you ask them, well, why didn't this happen before the ceaseless 100-day bombing campaign in Gaza, they have no answer to it. That's why they turn around and first they say, well, it was specifically because they wanted to steal the ships and because they're anti-Semitic. Are the Houthis anti-Semitic? Certainly, of course. I'm not going to get into the differences of like their anti-Semitism or whatever. It doesn't matter. They are. Of course they're anti-Semitic. This is not something that I have hidden. As a matter of fact, I've brought this up voluntarily myself, given the talking points to half of the liberals. Yeah, their actual slogan literally says curse the Jews, right? Ultimately, it doesn't have to be. Someone doesn't have to be like completely morally infallible for you to look at their actions and recognize that they are on the right side. That's it. I can't watch Rishi Sunak cry and complain about this more. I'm going to skip to whatever the American analysis is. Oh, they're turning around and also talking about aid to Ukraine. All right, let's see.
Must cease. Illegally detained vessels and crews must be released, and we remain prepared to back our words with actions.
Right, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak there speaking at the House of Commons, committing to more aid for Ukraine and talking about that if Putin wins, he will not stop there. But importantly, Rishi Sunak also took us through the US-led coalition to strike back Houthi assets in Yemen to try and ease what we've been seeing over the past few weeks, and frankly since the war began between Israel and Gaza, the disruption of trade and vessels, the attacking of vessels by Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. He says that this was all a part of a defense strategy, and also saying that he couldn't take this decision to the House of Commons because it was a security risk. We've got Claire Sebastian following developments for us from London. Claire, we've been hearing now from Rishi Sunak, important messaging coming through, also justifying why the UK was involved in this US-led strike in Yemen, justifying this, saying it is important to try and figure out a way to secure that Red Sea line, and the Royal Navy, important part of that.
Yeah, Lenny, I think you've got a measure of the delicateness of this action and this operation in the language that he used. He stressed that it was limited, that it was proportionate, specifically saying not escalatory. This is what the US-led coalition is grappling with, how to deter and degrade the Houthis' capabilities to continue to attack shipping in the Red Sea while not creating another flashpoint, another potential front in the Middle East, which is, of course, one of the biggest fears that the West has, alongside, of course, the war between Israel and Gaza. So he said, look, that their initial assessment of the UK action is that all 13 planned targets were hit.
And speaking of escalations, which of course this was going to cause, explosions reported near U.S. consulate in Iraq. Iran claims responsibility. The Iran's Revolutionary Guard claimed it was targeting the headquarters of spies. This is breaking at this moment, so I'm gonna wait for more details to develop. Okay, I don't think the U.S. consulate was destroyed, for example, but Intel crab, some sort of missile drone strike attack on Erbil tonight. 6+ large explosions noted, including near the U.S. consulate office. Watch this space. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran is now claiming that the ballistic missile attack on the city of Erbil in northern Iraq resulted in the destruction of a Mossad headquarters by anti-Iranian groups. So my question is, I mean, World War III? Question mark. Let's go. Like, it's time, right? Like, great. This is what everybody wanted, right? I thought that was the goal. I thought that was the major reason as to why we're doing it, right? It's wonderful, right? Except it's not. It's not wonderful at all. It's actually really bad. And I guess Iran is engaging in a de-escalatory. De-escalatory bombing. It's great. Wonderful stuff. Cool. Love to see it. Anyway, we'll get to this in a second. Let's finish this off.
The U.S. has said that they are also still assessing the effectiveness of what happened last week, how effective it was in degrading the Houthis' actions. And I think, case in point, just about an hour or so before Rishi Sunak came out and made that statement, we got reports coming in that the U.S. Central Command has now confirmed that a Houthi anti-ship ballistic missile struck a U.S.-owned and operated vessel just off Aden in Yemen, in the Gulf of Aden. That is not adjacent to Houthi-controlled areas in Yemen, but it does fit a pattern, and the U.S. is now attributing that to the Houthis. So this continues. It's clear that the operation to try to stop these attacks on shipping in the Red Sea is not yet done. But for Rishi Sunak, an important moment here. This is the first time he's authorized military action as Prime Minister, and now standing before his parliament to justify that. He's likely to get questions on this from MPs.
It's kind of funny to think like bombing Yemen further, something that we have done with our proxies for the past decade, almost, or directly actually for the past decade, was going to somehow change the outcome that was a demonstrable failure that ended with a cessation of hostilities between Iran and Saudi Arabia conducted by China this past year. If anything, directly bombing Yemen only further solidifies whoever is in power there. Because now you don't even have that Sunni connection. You don't even have that this is the Saudis are actually on board with our presidency because they want to restore the Sunni power, right? It's now directly a outside American force. It's definitely more complicated to describe to a person that the groups that are still championing regime change in the country that you live in are actually funded and facilitated by the United States of America than it is to show them, it is the U.S. bombing you when they're bombing you. I don't think this is anything like a World War III. If it keeps escalating, it's going to be U.S. and allies genocide of the Middle East. I mean, we'll see what happens. I always maintain hope that it won't turn into World War III. China literally does nothing but ceasefire. They negotiate 3 in Myanmar in January and December. Okay, I'm not going to get into China's involvement in Myanmar. Okay, Jesus Christ, you just want to trigger every Os and Andy in the chat, I think.